Hello, I'm Bill Fox, and this program is about East Brunswick. As a result of the many problems the garbage crisis in New Jersey has caused us here in East Brunswick, I suspect that more of these programs have been devoted to garbage than any other single topic. For reasons I'll explain later, I hope and believe that this will be the last time the garbage issue needs to be the topic of a program of this sort. For background, I'm going to deviate from our usual format and begin by sharing my perspective on East Brunswick and the garbage issue. Controversy about garbage is not new in East Brunswick. Until around 1950, the town operated its own garbage dump on what is now Harts Lane. In those days, a garbage dump was just that, a place where garbage was dumped. There were no standards and no regulations. Characteristically of dumps at the time, the East Brunswick dump burned most of the time. As long as there were no houses nearby, no one paid much attention. Two things happened which made it necessary to close the Harts Lane dump and relocate it. Especially in the years following World War II, the population of the town began to grow. In 1940, there were about 2,000 people in East Brunswick, and by 1950, there were 5,000, and this created the need for a larger dump. With the new people came new housing in the area around Harts Lane. The people living in the new houses didn't want a burning pile of garbage as their neighbor. So around 1950, the town moved the dump to Edgeboro Road, across from what is now the Edgeboro landfill. The town continued to operate it, but changing the location didn't solve the problems. In spite of their best efforts, the dump continued to burn and spread acrid smoke over the entire area. In 1952, the Township Committee, which was the governing body at the time, determined that it must seek an alternative. The one selected was to turn over the operation of the dump to the operators of the Herbert Sand Company, also on Edgeboro Road. The reason this alternative was selected was that there were several abandoned pit areas where the garbage could be dumped, and the leftover material from sand mining could be used to cover the garbage after it was dumped. This proposal immediately became a political controversy. In the 1952 elections, the Democrats who had proposed the alternative were defeated by a Republican slate who opposed the choice and promised to form a citizens committee to examine the matter and recommend other options. When the new government took office in 1953, they did just that. Unfortunately for them, the result of the citizen committee's review was a proposal which was even more controversial than the one offered by the old government. Put the dump in the most remote section of the township, a swampy area near the intersection of Dunham's Corner and Cranberry Roads. Today, we know the area as a Middlesex County park called Jamesburg Park. Fortunately for us, there was so much opposition to the new alternative that the Township Committee went back to the one which would keep the dump on Edgeboro Road. In 1953, the operation of the dump was given over to the private sector, and it was moved to its present area south of Edgeboro Road. The new operators were successful in controlling the burning, the smell went away, and for the next 30 years, Edgeboro landfill was out of sight and out of mind. Then, 4 years ago, in 1984, if you'll pardon the expression, all hell broke loose. New Jersey's garbage crisis became East Brunswick's environmental crisis. Hundreds of garbage trucks and thousands of tons of garbage from all over our state were directed to Edgeboro by state authorities. The trucks made our roads unsafe, and the volume of garbage made it nearly impossible to operate the landfill properly. For over 3 years, a garbage truck entered Edgeboro every 30 seconds of every working hour, 5.5 days a week. There was little we could do to stem the tide. In 1984, we started filing lawsuits. There were a dozen or so from 1984 through 1987. The town spent hundreds of thousands of your dollars on these lawsuits, even taking our case to the New Jersey Supreme Court, but we could get no relief. We appealed to the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection and the Board of Public Utilities for relief, but got none. We warned of the extremely hazardous conditions which were created, but did not even get sympathy. Many of you have told me that you couldn't understand why the mayor and council allowed these conditions to continue. The reason is that acts of the state legislature in the early 1970s took away all local control of solid waste disposal and placed solid waste management in the hands of the state and county governments. As we've seen in East Brunswick, the legislature was very effective in removing these matters from local determination. The crisis in East Brunswick reached its peak in the spring of 1987. Sadly, our direst predictions came true, and 6 people were killed in garbage-related accidents within a few days. These tragedies finally moved the powers that be to act. At the end of 1987, all garbage originating outside of Middlesex County was banned from Edgeboro. In the late summer and fall of 1987, the Middlesex County freeholders adopted a waste management plan for our county. This plan includes the use of Edgeboro landfill for county waste and the construction of a resource recovery plant in Sayreville. At the same time, the freeholders chose the Middlesex County Utilities Authority to construct and operate the necessary facilities. We'll learn more about the Utilities Authority and the Solid Waste Management Plan in a few minutes. With the out-of-county garbage flow ended, Edgeboro is now receiving about the same amount of waste as it was in 1983, so the truck traffic is substantially diminished. Other problems remain, however. Among these are a serious odor problem, garbage which over the years has been dumped outside the confines of the existing landfill, and especially along the banks of the Raritan and South Rivers. And of course, there's a potential future expansion of the landfill. After several weeks of negotiations with the MCUA, the Township Council recently authorized me to sign an agreement with the authority. In return for ending our lawsuits, the authority agrees to deal with the odor and other problems, provide us with a voice in the ongoing operation and any future expansion of the landfill, and pay over $3 million per year to East Brunswick in host community and other financial benefits. My hope for this program is that you will learn more about the new player in the garbage game, the Middlesex County Utilities Authority, or MCUA. And with me to help us learn some more about the authority are 3 officials from the authority. The chairman of the authority, Matiskevich, William Molinowski from East Brunswick, who is commissioner of the authority, and Fred Kurtz, who is the executive director of the authority. And I apologize, I rehearsed your name, as you know, a half dozen times before we started, and I told you I'd mess it up, and I did. Marty, let's start out with a little bit of description of what the authority is and where it came from and what it's done over the years.
Well, I've been serving on the authority now for 8 years. It's been there for many years. I imagine somewhere in the 30-some years, and Mr. Kurtz can elaborate on that because he served a lot longer than I have, and he was also chairman of the authority. But many years ago, there's been a problem throughout Middlesex County with sewage. All the way up into the northern end where I come from, I live in Middlesex Borough, and I know at that time it was controversial when the county decided that something had to be done in reference to wastewater treatment. So that's how the Sewage Authority came about. And I say Sewage Authority because it was not changed till later. But I think they do an outstanding job at the authority. Most people don't know the job that's done in reference to cleaning up the Raritan River through the years. And I would hope that Mr. Kurtz would elaborate a little further on that because, as I said, he's had served on the authority for many years as chairman.
Okay, Bill, I want to ask you, you're an East Brunswick resident. How long have you been on the authority?
Well, I've been on the authority since 1980, and I got there by replacing a well-known gentleman from East Brunswick also, and his name was Rick Palumbo, who was manager of Anheuser-Busch, presently known as Busch Industries. He represented, for the most part at that time in 1980, was known as an industrial representative to the authority. And at that time, in I guess it was '79, when he decided that he was going to retire, he approached me because we had relationships, friendly relationships over the years. We're both born and raised in South River. Both knew the problems, as Marty expressed, with the pollution in the not only the Raritan River but the South River, the branch that comes up in back of Anheuser-Busch's plant. And I, for one, with a personal experience, I used to love to fish as a young fellow in the river below the dam. And I can recall, I guess I was about 12 years old at the time. All of a sudden, when I was down there, the pollution really started, and the fish really came up and swelled up, and it left such an impression on my mind from an environmental point of view. And I, of course, I was young, didn't realize the impact that really had in my mind at the time. But as I grew older and got involved with county affairs and affairs like we've seen over the past years in environmental concerns, I was really glad to have gotten a chance to represent the county through the authority, and of course East Brunswick, even though at that time perhaps a lot of folks didn't know too much about the Middlesex County Utility Authority.
Bill, who makes the appointments to the Board of Commissioners?
The Middlesex County chosen freeholders.
Okay. Fred, I want to come back to this issue of the environment. It sounds to me like the authority really is an environmental agency in one sense. And I want to come back to that point, but Marty had mentioned that you've had a long association with the authority, since you're executive director now, I assume you must have some professional qualifications also.
Yes, Mayor. I've been with the authority, pardon me, since 1968, and at that time I was a consulting engineer in private practice. About 2 years ago, I sold my business and took a full-time job as the executive director to the authority. And during that period of time, I represented most communities in the area and had always been aware of the problems facing our county as a growing county with respect to all of the most important things that we need to be a vibrant county. So that I like to feel that I bring some level of expertise, having a background in civil engineering and basically being an environmentalist at heart.
And have you resided in the county? Do you reside in the county?
Yes, I was born in South Amboy and I reside in Old Bridge.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's go back to, let's stay on sewage for a while and those environmental issues. Both Marty and Bill mentioned that the cleanup of the Raritan River was an important objective and that the authority had a role in that. What can you tell us about the history of that?
The authority was formed in 1949, and I remember the early 50s, many communities in the county opted not to join in the authority. South Amboy, Perth Amboy, Woodbridge, and various other communities opted to maintain their own wastewater disposal facilities. As a result of the authority handling most of the flow in the county, there have been some magnificent changes in water quality, and they became particularly obvious after we went into secondary treatment, which is a very high level of treatment, removes most of the impurities that normally flow into the bay as a result of inadequate treatment. I think you may have seen recently an article that appeared in one of the papers about oysters in Raritan Bay. We've known that for a number of years. We've monitored the bay consistently since 1952, and we're aware of the fact that there are not only oysters but soft clams and indeed a very small run of shad two years ago came up the Raritan River. But only as a result of the County Utilities Authority do we enjoy some future with respect to the recreational facilities that will become available in the Raritan Bay area.
I'm surprised that we didn't see headlines that said monster oysters found in Raritan Bay, but apparently these oysters are quite remarkable in terms of having survived the oyster blight or whatever it is that's been killing oysters all over the state, and evidently they're of some substantial size.
Well, they're out looking for them now. We have found them each time we've monitored the ocean bottom. As an interesting aside, what we do is put in a 1 square yard piece of sheet steel and excavate everything within that square yard. And we count sandworms, bloodworms, clams, oysters, and whatever happens to be in there. So that the authority has always been extremely cognizant of its responsibility to a clean Raritan Valley. And I think that the work that's been done speaks to the fact that they have carried out that obligation responsibly.
Now, the plant that you operate is located where?
We operate a secondary facility in Saraville. We're presently handling about 100 million gallons of sewage each day.
And, of course, that process results in sludge, and
Yes,
that's another controversy, I'm afraid.
We make about 1 million tons, that would be wet tons of sludge each year. And for years we've been trying to find an alternative that will take it out of the ocean. Some 10 years ago we sought a plant approval which would allow us to have incinerated that sludge. It was not approved at the time. We wanted to incinerate it with solid waste to eliminate the solid waste problem that the authority foresaw coming. But we're now actively pursuing some method that will allow us to leave the ocean as a disposal site.
Let me, I want to approach the garbage thing in Edgeboro a little more systematically, but while we're on sludge, one of the fears that's been expressed by some people in East Brunswick is that you have this plan to solve the sludge problem by dumping it at Edgeboro. Is there any truth to that?
No, there's no truth at all. To handle the sludge that we produce would cover 1 acre of ground 70 feet in height each year. And it seems obvious that that material should not be distributed at Edgeboro landfill. The authority has made a commitment not to put it there, and they intend to live up to that commitment.
Marty, how did the authority move from sewage to garbage? Or how did garbage come to be included in your responsibility?
I guess the problem came up in the last year or so because of the problems throughout the whole state, and especially the county. And there was discussion back and forth as far as the Utilities Authority was concerned, but this all came about because of actually the governing body of the county, which is the freeholders. And they had to change the charter so that we could do this, and by resolution we were authorized to go into this resources recovery system. Hopefully that's the direction we hope to go, to generate electricity for our sewage treatment plant and also take care of this solid waste problem that we have. We know it's an enormous thing, but we've got the qualified staff people. Mr. Kurtz has been an expert in this field. Plus we have outstanding consulting firms. And hopefully we're going to move on, and we're going to do, we feel, a good job for the people, and above all, the safety of the people in the area will become number one. We will do whatever we have to do as far as expenditure of funds. Hopefully, if this comes about, and I think it will, it'll be one of the cleanest and most safest plants in the world. This is our plans.
Bill, did you support the authority taking on this responsibility, and if you did, why?
Yes, in fact I did, and the reason for it is that I thought it was a good plan. Right, it's probably the best out of all the other alternatives that I've heard about. I like it from the standpoint that I believe that this authority, having worked with it for 8 years, can do the proper job rather than having it go out to probably some private concern or whatever. I know I can believe in the integrity of the authority. When they make a commitment to get a job done right, it's going to be done right. It's going to be done safely in terms of protecting the environment. I think the expertise is there, the staff is there, the ability of the people that run it and manage it is there. Obviously, we've seen what we've done with the water treatment type of thing and what we cover there. I know how things are handled in terms of concerns by several residents in terms of odor controls, even from our plant, and the actions that were taken by the authority to overcome some of those problems. And yes, there'll be upsets somewhere along the way. You'll always have a mechanical problem that can be addressed quickly, but those things do occur in that authority and as well as any business. But I'm just a believer of the quick action that we take when we are confronted with a problem and when we're confronted with the certain objectives given to us by the county freeholders. And we take that responsibility seriously. I believe in it.
Okay. Fred, I want to move on to some of the details of the plan in just a minute, but I should have asked you before, the facility in Saraville, how big is it? How many people work there? What kind of, is it a mom and pop operation, or is it something larger?
Well, contrary to what a lot of people believe, and incidentally, we encourage visits. We'd love nothing more than to have everyone in East Brunswick come down and visit the plant and see how it's operated. Indeed, we have visits made by groups from all over the world. Recently, we had a group in from China, and when they left, they presented me with a rather small Buddha in appreciation for the tour. But back to the question. It's not a mom-and-pop affair. It's a business. We have about 104 employees. We manage a facility that conservatively is worth $500 million, and we are very, very selective in trying to get the best people that we can to fill the jobs that have to be filled. We're advertising all the time. We have some openings right now in our IPP program, Mayor.
What's IPP?
Industrial pretreatment. We monitor some 230 industries in our county to make sure that they're not putting something into the waste stream that doesn't belong there. But as a commercial, if there's anyone watching this show that has an interest, we'd love to talk to them.
What, when I was at your building, I noticed a room off on one side that had laboratory written on it. What kind of lab facilities do you have?
We have extensive laboratory facilities. We are a certified laboratory, and we conduct approximately 26,000 tests a year in that laboratory. We monitor all of our connections to determine what they're giving us to treat, and we've recently put some state-of-the-art equipment in that as recently as last week has allowed us to pinpoint an industry that was giving us a material difficult to treat. We try to stay on top of everything that's happening, and the commissioners have been very generous in coming forth with the funds that it takes to keep us on top of the pile.
Will those facilities and that talent be available in your solid waste activities?
Very definitely. In fact, I think it's one of the pluses with respect to having this authority handle it. We have tremendous resources in place that need not be duplicated. And it's already shown that it'll result in savings to the people of our county.
All right, let's move on to some specifics about what's being done. In the plan amendment that the freeholders adopted last year, in broad terms, what were the parts of that amendment?
Basically, we were designated as an implementing agency to construct a resource recovery facility limited in size to 2,250 tons per day, and to operate the Edgeboro landfill for in-county waste only until such time as the resource recovery facility comes online, which is estimated to be 1992. So that our charge is to manage the county's solid waste flow and to provide for it not only for the next 5 or 25 years, but for the next 100 years. So that what we'll be doing continuously is upgrading these facilities, upgrading our plan, acquiring properties as they become necessary, to try to keep at least 5 years ahead of the need.
In Now let's talk about Edgeboro for a minute. Now, you said that you would operate Edgeboro until the resource recovery plant is online, which you expect to be about 1992. What happens after that?
After 1992, we're estimating that there will be about 20% of the flow coming to Edgeboro. Hopefully, we'll be bringing approximately 15 trucks per day of incinerator ash to a state-of-the-art landfill, which we hope to construct in one section, as well as those materials that have to bypass the waste stream at the new facility. Items such as refrigerators, washing machines, and all manner of non-burnable items.
And the plant in Saraville is going to be where?
The plant in Saraville will be at the site of the old National Lead Company, which is an abandoned, derelict, blighted area in the borough of Saraville. It's immediately adjacent to our property, which again is a plus because we have 100 people right there now that hopefully some of them will be able to train to move over for maintenance positions and what have you.
There's been a lot of talk in the press lately about incinerator ash and whether or not that constitutes a hazardous material. Have you been following that, and
Yes,
do you have some opinion about where that's going to go?
I believe that the federal EPA is going to declassify municipal waste ash from its hazardous connotation. But whether they do or not, we have a major problem that has to be addressed in Middlesex County by Middlesex County. I'm sure that no one's neighbor wants them throwing their garbage over the fence, and I believe that in the next 10 years you're not going to find anyone willing to take our ash. Our plan right now is to do whatever has to be done to provide a fail-safe entombment for this ash, whether it's hazardous or not.
And when you say fail-safe entombment, what kind of thing do you have in mind?
Well, right now, the state-of-the-art is what's known as a double-line landfill, which is basically sand covered by clay, covered by an impervious layer, covered with more clay and more sand and another impermeable layer. The idea being that it, in effect, creates a bathtub. And through those sand beds under it would lie a leachate collection system so that anything leaking through that, if it should rupture, would be collected and taken to treatment. Now, as you know, our main trunk line passes right by the Edgeboro landfill, and in our plan we're providing for pre-treatment, and by that I mean wastewater treatment facilities that will handle not only the leachate from the sanitary landfill, but anything that might leave the ash section of the landfill. So I think it's about as tight as we can possibly make it.
Another concern that I know people have had locally is this whole question of out-of-county waste. It's clear that the problems we've had over the last 3 years are a consequence of other counties not attending to their responsibility and the state directing that garbage here. And many of us felt that that was a political decision on the part of the current administration in Trenton. And what's to prevent that from happening again? And how do we, are we going to be faced with a third of the state's garbage coming to Edgeboro, for example, in the future?
Well, we don't believe so. We believe that since the creation of these 22 waste management districts, that each county is going to be prodded until they address their problem. Our philosophy is that we're going to try to be prepared for the worst. I don't think that there's anyone that would fight harder than this authority to keep out-of-county waste out of the Edgeboro facility, or indeed out of the resource recovery plant. No, there is no fail-safe method there. Obviously, the federal government or the state government could adopt legislation that might force it upon not only Middlesex County, but any of the other counties that are doing the job. In fact, it's been an impediment to most counties to move forward for that very reason. Everyone's afraid that for some political decision, suddenly they're going to be ready and therefore forced to receive the waste.
as an aside, I think that as the counties adopt their own plans and do something, that's going to generate support for legislation that Assemblyman Pelley from Middlesex County's had before the legislature now for about 3 years, which would prohibit by state law the movement of garbage from one district to another without the receiving district's permission. Because I think Middlesex is the 6th county to adopt a plan and start moving in the direction of taking care of its own problem. And as we get a couple more, I think there may be enough support for that legislation, which there hasn't been in the past.
I think you're right.
And I hope that we all will lobby our legislative delegation to move that legislation forward. In terms of the arrangement about Edgeboro now between you and Edgeboro, you haven't yet purchased it, have you?
No, we haven't, Mayor.
And is it your plan to ultimately purchase?
Our plan is to purchase it if we can gain the permits that DEP requires in order to operate it over the long haul. If something should come up during the investigations that are now underway that still show it may not be in the best interest of our county to move forward, the authority will stop. We don't believe that that's a realistic situation, but we're not going to purchase Edgeboro until we're absolutely sure that we've crossed every T and dotted every I.
Marty, let me ask you, I think everybody thought that once the freeholders had adopted the plan and passed the responsibility over to the authority that it was a done deal, as they say. From what Fred is saying, that's not exactly the case.
No, there's a lot of work to be done. I mean, we have a date set of 1991, but we're having some appraisals done now on the property at the NL property, and it's going to be a long shot. We got to move slowly. It's going to take a long time, but we can't act too hastily. We've got to act slowly to solve this problem.
What are the concerns of the commissioners with regard to the potential acquisition of Edgeboro, Bill? Or maybe Marty?
We hope we can get it cheap enough when we do get it.
I gathered from what Fred was saying that there are some environmental and potential liability concerns to be taken care of.
There are concerns, yes. And until we get information from the consultants that we have working on those sorts of things, and until we get a full report from them, it just has to wait to see what we turn up, and then meet on it and decide what's the best direction to take from there.
Fred, what kinds of investigations are being done now?
Well, they're continuing with the environmental impact work as well as additional well monitoring. We meet literally every other day with the state, and we'll probably be installing some more groundwater monitoring wells there. I met with the consultants today. They're well along into the 5-year plan and hoping to develop a 30-year plan, which probably won't last 30 years, Mayor, but we're projecting for as long a period of time as we can in order to make it not only environmentally safe but cost effective as well. But some of the issues that have been raised are issues of wetlands, drainage from the site to the South River and the Raritan River. A whole bevy of permits are required to accomplish what we want to accomplish there, which would include purchasing all of the vacant land right out to the water's edge so that ultimately it can be turned into a thing of beauty. And while most people have a difficult time believing that, I have actually seen some of these landfills and have seen what can happen to them. So that we believe that if it's properly done and properly managed, whenever that thing is finally closed, it's going to be a direct asset to all of the people in Middlesex County.
Let me come back to the groundwater testing for a minute. A lot of people locally have looked at the results of some of the consulting reports really over the years and said, this can't be true. This water looks like it's clean enough to drink, and it's water that's around the landfill and close to the landfill. And I guess for some years the laboratory that was used for some years was decertified a year or so ago, and they said,
Yes.
well, maybe the results weren't accurate. How confident are you at this point about the lack of hazardous material leaching out, or are you confident about that?
Well, Mayor, I was not a proponent for the acquisition of Edgeboro originally. It was my belief several years ago that there had to be massive groundwater problems. And it was not until the final reports came in from our consulting engineers that I was convinced that we had something that was manageable. One of the things that makes me even more confident is the experience of others. There's a plant being constructed this very day in Palm Beach, Florida. It's a 2,000 ton per day plant. It's in the middle of their groundwater recharge area from which they get their drinking water. And I discussed the issue of groundwater contamination with the people in Florida, and they're doing the very same thing that was done in Long Island and a half a dozen other places. That groundwater plume of contaminants is being withdrawn, and the water is being utilized as cooling water in the resource recovery facility. So that in at least 4 cases that I'm familiar with, the installation of these facilities has actually led to a cleaning up of a groundwater problem. Now, the same thing could happen in Edgeboro. If there ever is a groundwater problem, once again, we have a major facility right next to it. Nothing would prevent us from pumping out that plume, making a repair, and putting the water into our system. And I might point out that it is our intention to strictly monitor all of these exterior wells on a weekly basis, so that from our perspective, we will leave no stone unturned.
But up to now, there's been no evidence of contamination of the groundwater. Is that
No
a true
no
statement?
evidence of serious groundwater contamination. I believe that if our consultant were here, he would tell you that some of the contaminants that they did find were either the result of construction of the cutoff wall when they churned up all of the material that was in there, material that may be coming in from the river itself, and finally some contaminants that may still be there as a result of the garbage that's outside the cutoff wall. We submitted our hydrogeological model to the state yesterday. They're analyzing it, and we'll provide some advices as to whether or not we need more monitoring equipment there.
Okay. Let's move up from below the ground to above the ground. Another major complaint about Edgeboro, particularly of late, has been that it stinks. And as I've observed, when it's not stinking in East Brunswick, it's stinking in South River and Sayreville and parts of Old Bridge. I recall the first day that we met, which was really, or at least recently, really last December, and this issue came up, and you said, well, we're odor experts, or odor control experts. What kinds of things are you doing, or can you do to control the smell that's coming from, apparently coming from Edgeboro?
Yeah, well, Mayor, that's our primary concern right now. What we're doing is hoping to light the second flare at the end of this week.
Well, let's back up to what the flare is, and what the first flare is, and what the purpose of what's a flare.
The problem of odors is a result of having buried 10 million tons of trash in a hurry without proper cover and without proper management, not because it wasn't available, it was impossible to provide it with the flow that was coming in. So what we're suffering from now, and we suffer from that same odor down at the wastewater treatment plant from time to time, is the methane that's coming up as a result of all of this heavy dumping in a short period of time. How can we alleviate it? We can alleviate it by pumping the methane out and by burning it, just as you would natural gas in your home stove. When we moved into Edgeboro, there was one flare that was working, and we immediately sought to have 2 additional flares put in with all of the peripheral piping and some 40 wells to try to draw that gas out and burn it so that it doesn't seep out of the dump. And it's a putrid odor, and I'm in full sympathy with all of the tickets that I get for allowing this odor to take place.
And do you believe the flares will solve the problem?
I believe that they're going to solve it, and frankly, if they don't, we'll take whatever measures are necessary to solve it.
And in fact, that's something you've agreed to in our agreement.
That's correct.
Without getting too technical, what are some of the other things that could be done if that doesn't work? How does one control odor?
Well, at this point, the experts tell me that outside of finally capping it with 2 feet of impervious clay, our only option is to drill additional methane wells wherever they're needed to try to get the gas out and to ignite it before it bothers the neighbors of the landfill.
Now, does the burning itself cause any odor or problem?
No, there's no odor whatsoever associated with the burning.
Okay, and this approach has worked in other places?
Yes, it has. It's very much like the flares that you see lit on the turnpike as you approach Newark Airport.
But when I drive through there, it really stinks.
Well, they're only burning a part of it. We're hoping to
okay.
burn it all.
All right. Good. And then whatever else is available, you're really committed to do.
We will do whatever it takes to clean that
Yeah.
problem up, Mayor. Unfortunately, it's going to take another month or another 3 weeks till we get the 3rd flare lit, but we are working as fast as possible. We have a trailer on the site from which we've cut both ends so that the pipe welding can take place rain or shine, and we're doing everything that's humanly possible to eliminate that odor problem.
The other thing that I wanted to talk about is a whole bunch of things, but another thing has to do with what you mentioned a few minutes ago, the garbage that's outside of the so-called cutoff wall, which contains the active landfill. I know we've been very concerned about getting the riverfront cleaned up, getting that taken care of, and I also know that that's covered in the agreement. What, maybe you could explain for folks what the plans are with regard to that?
Well, Edgeboro has submitted a plan to DEP for some sort of remedial action. We're having our consultants address the issue, and to date there seem to be only 2 options. The first being to dig it out, move it, and disturb the wetlands, because as you know, it's all been grown over again with the wetland grasses, or to do some sort of encapsulation of that waste. Preliminarily, our consultants advise us that whatever was in that waste has been leached out by the tidal flow. If you go down the river, you'll see that it's right to the water's edge.
Looks awful.
So it's not only unsightly, it's really not safe. But our consulting engineer is working on that problem to come up with something that will eliminate it and either encapsulate it or remove it.
Is there a sense of which way it will go? It doesn't seem to me that it would be a good idea to disturb all of that.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. Without trying to prejudge the consultant's report, it would be my wish that it be encapsulated, because, as you know, it's next to the cutoff wall, and removing that overburden might have some effect on the integrity of the cutoff wall. And as you point out, more importantly, there really isn't much point in disturbing an old dump if you can eliminate it.
When you say encapsulation, what does that mean?
Well, again, without having the report, I can only give you my impression.
Well, I mean,
some sort of
conceptually,
impermeable layer of clay or something that would completely enclose it, over which would be planted the natural grasses that occur there.
Now, at the present time, you're only leasing the facility. That's correct?
That's correct, Mayor.
So some of this really can't be done until you actually own it.
Yeah, we're hesitant to do all of the things that we know must be done until we actually have title to the facility.
How soon could that be?
We're hoping that it'll be by the 1st of January 1989.
And just to go on a step further with that, you mentioned also that you want to do some restoration or beautify the area or something. What kinds of things have you been thinking about?
Well, the commissioners have engaged the Rutgers Ag School to do some research and development there. Rutgers has advised us that they have some ideas as to how we might come up with a better cover, a more effective cover, and one which actually helps things grow. Most landfills, as you know, once they're capped, become brown masses of weeds and debris. We're hoping that we can create oases in this landfill where large trees might be able to grow, and where certainly perennial ground cover can exist without turning brown for 8 months of the year. We're very optimistic that Rutgers is going to provide a magnificent service for us.
Now, I know that your acquisition plans involve a number of acres that are outside of the landfill itself. What would be done with that?
That area would remain in its present natural state. The only intent behind purchasing that is to provide a buffer, if you would, so that it doesn't ultimately become a housing development or a high-rise garden apartment, and it remains in its natural state.
The agreement, Marty, calls for an advisory group of citizens of New Brunswick and East Brunswick and Saraville and South River, and someone named by the commissioners and someone named by the freeholders, I think. How do you envision this advisory group functioning?
Well, we haven't discussed that to a great degree. However, it has been discussed, but I'm sure that what we're going to have to do is, when we get these appointees, is meet every so often, discuss the problems that are coming up, and if there's any criticism, constructive, we'll have to look into it and correct it. But our plans are to really, whatever comes before us, and if we find that there's corrective measures, they will be done. But I'm sure this committee will function real well once we get everything underway, and once we purchase the landfill, as Mr. Kurtz has mentioned. You know, we're sort of, at the present time, you know, it's kind of in limbo until we get the thing under our total control. But I can assure the whole area that good people will be appointed, and I'm sure it'll be for the benefit of all the people in the surrounding communities.
Do you have anything to add to that, Fred, as far as this advisory group is concerned?
Yeah, I really do. I agree with the chairman 100%, and I sincerely hope that when it comes time for you and the other communities to make your appointment, that you give us some people that really give a damn and not only care about the environment, but the operation of the landfill as well.
Let's talk for a minute about the new facility, the resource recovery facility. While I think people tend to think of the location as being out of sight and out of mind, the wind does blow this way 10 or 15% of the time coming up the river, and I think it is of concern because of that, and general concern and interest to our residents. There's a lot of controversy about these facilities, even though by state law it is a policy of the state of New Jersey that this is how we're going to handle our garbage. What can you say about the safety or lack of safety of facilities, and how can we be assured that that it's not another nuclear generating plant fiasco, which everybody, and I've drawn this analogy myself, that in the early 70s people were telling us that this is the latest thing, and it's going to be safe, and it's going to be cheap, and it's going to be efficient, and it hasn't been any of those things necessarily. What assurances do we have that resource recovery technology is really the way to take care of our garbage?
Well, I have visited plants that were, I guess, about 30 years old in Germany, France, Holland, several other European countries, and I've actually seen the change that technology has made. For example, one plant in particular in West Germany had been operating for 30 years, and extremely simple. The garbage went in, they burned it, they took the ash and they piled it up outside the plant, and 2 blocks away were thousands of people living in that proximity for 30 years, putting up with that type of problem. 50 or 60 miles away in another section of West Germany, they had a magnificent facility with a huge glass room on top so that they could monitor everything that was happening, and there were beautiful homes in the rolling countryside all around this facility. But the difference between a plant that was built 30 years ago, if anyone remembers the Woodbridge plant of 30 years ago or the Perth Amboy plant of 30 years ago, it's normally what you think of when you think of an incinerator. They had no real technology involved other than flame creates garbage burning. But what we're going to do is to put on state-of-the-art mechanisms to try to control all types of pollutants insofar as they're controllable. There'll be electrostatic precipitators, there'll be scrubbers, there'll be bag houses, and if something comes out in the next 3 years that does a better job, there'll be a fourth member in that train of air pollution control devices. I can't really make any promises except to say that based on having seen these things all over our country and all over the world and having talked to people who are managing them, I believe the technology is there to make the risk so small that I'm happy to take that risk. I think it's a far greater benefit to all of us to take that risk than to continue to pollute our groundwater aquifers, which may not reach our home until 30 years down the line when my grandchild takes a drink of water because some idiot dumped a barrel of hazardous toxic waste into a landfill. So my philosophy is take care of the problem where you can see it, do it to the best of your ability, and you can't be faulted.
What provisions for monitoring will there be?
There'll be an automatic direct, not an automatic, a direct line to Trenton to DEP, which will monitor the stack gases and the temperature in the boilers themselves. Undoubtedly, the county's going to ask to have a full-time inspector in this plant, as they do have on the Edgeboro landfill, and any other type of monitoring that people feel gives them a better comfort level. We're not going to squander our money, but if there's something good out there, we certainly like to hear about it.
And will the ash be monitored also?
Absolutely.
Will these tests be done in your labs or someplace else?
We'll split samples, Mayor. As we do now, the most critical tests that we take are taken on the basis of split samples. The sample is taken, half is given to an independent laboratory, we do the other half ourselves and compare results.
And what's the purpose of that?
Well, we want to make sure our people are on the ball, and the less we let slip through our fingers, the better off we'll all be.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone has a bad day.
Mm-hmm. Now, what happens if the resource recovery facility isn't online in 1992?
If it's not on by 1992, Edgeboro will probably be out of existence by 1995. We just can't handle the waste that's going to be coming down the pike.
What happens if you don't reach agreement with the owners of Edgeboro, or for some reason it can't be purchased?
Well, the problem then would go back to the Board of Freeholders to recite a landfill in some other location. And incidentally, I know I speak for the commissioners, that's something that's going to be looked into rather quickly, because when you're talking about drinking water, wastewater, or garbage disposal, you can't plan for 20 years. You've got to plan much farther ahead than that if you're going to be fulfilling your function as a public servant.
And when you say that's going to be looked at further, is that by the commissioners or by the freeholders?
By the commissioners.
How, Marty, are you going to go about that unenviable task?
Well, our consultants will be working, and whatever the recommendations are, we'll probably have to recommend it back to the freeholder board.
Mm-hmm.
But we got to look ahead. It's just Mr. Kurtz said 20 years have rolled around very fast. Actually, we should look ahead 40, 50 years. And along with that, I would hope that the county and the state would get maybe along with recycling. We're moving now, but I don't think we're moving fast enough in certain areas. And I think what people got to also remember, besides solid waste problem, is let's concern ourselves with future generations, you know. In this country, everything's convenience. And hey, I bring it here and I throw it away. I travel through foreign countries where you don't see a one-way container. Most items that you purchase at your store is returnable. And I would hope I know this plastic thing is going to be difficult, but I see no reason why milk should be taken to anyone's home in a plastic container. We can do it in paper and possibly burn. But in my time, soda containers were returnable, and I know industry doesn't like it, but somewhere along the line, the legislatures have to bite the bullet. And along with the problems that we have today, we've got to get this returnable containers going instead of one way. And I'm for it all the way. And I think it's because I understand it more, being older than average people. Because the average American today, convenience is all he concerns about. It's just like going shopping. They want to park in front of the store. They don't want to walk 100 feet or whatever.
Well, on that note, I certainly agree with that we've got to change our habits and our uses in this area. I think we'll conclude this. I want to thank you all three for joining me. I'm sure that you'd welcome some of our residents taking up the opportunity to arrange visits to the wastewater treatment facility, and I hope you'll be seeing a lot of them there, and maybe that will give them a better idea who the new operators of Edgeboro landfill.
They're certainly welcome, Mayor, and thank you for having us this evening.
And let
Thank
me
you,
just
Mayor.
say you're welcome over to the authority at any time,
Thank
and
you.
you might take a trip with us sometime to see one of these facilities, these resource recovery
I have a
facilities.
tour scheduled tomorrow. If you'd like to
No,
join
thank
in,
you.
you're
No,
welcome
thank you.
too.
All right, that's all the time we have, gentlemen. Thank you very much for being here with me.
Thank you, man.
Thank you.